Welcome to the Carp Chronicles podcast. This is episode number 35, and we have an absolute amazing episode in store for you. John Baker, who needs no introduction, has very kindly joined us for several hours to go into the depths about bait construction. We talk about flavors. In fact, most of what we talk about is about flavors, what constitutes a good flavor, what flavors are made up of. We also touch upon base mixes. We talk about what carp would find attractive. We talk about what works, what doesn't work. It's just an absolute fascinating conversation, and I'm sure you're going to love it as much as we loved recording it. Before we jump in to the episode with John Baker, of course, this is brought to you by carphuntergiveaways.co.uk. Absolutely love these guys. As always, they give back to Phoenix heroes who help war veterans with PTSD. So it's a fantastic company to get behind. So if you need any new alarms or bivvies or anything like that, go check them out, carphuntergiveaways.co.uk. And before we lead into the episode, the wait is finally over. We have finally got our hook baits up for sale, and very, very soon they will be followed by some very select ingredients that we feel make a genuinely huge difference to people's baits. And some of these ingredients are very, very hard to get hold of. We're actually working hard to ensure that we get the highest quality ingredients possible. So the ingredient side of things will be coming up soon, but right now available are our hook baits. We have 4 hook baits in the range to start with. We will add more. At this time of year, it's all about the high attract hook baits. So that is what we're bringing out right now. So go ahead, if you wish to do so, check out baitbros.co.uk. That's bait and then BROS.co.uk. Check us out if you want to have a look. If you want to make a purchase, fantastic. That helps support this podcast. Without further ado, let's lead into the interview with John Baker. John, welcome to the podcast. Are you joining us in a tipple?
I actually have just finished I had a couple of cans of Stella this evening with a meal. We had baked potatoes and cold meat, something nice and quick and easy, and I had a couple of cans of Stella. So I've just finished it actually. So I wanted to have a clear head for tonight. So I'm halfway through the second can, so I've nearly finished.
Beautiful. Well, when we spoke on the phone about wine and different things like that, I was thinking, crikey, I need to get a nice aged wine in for this one, but I didn't have a chance to. So I'm just I'm on beer as well. I've got some Old Speckled Hens, and I've got a bit of a dangerous one, Brewdog Triple Hazy, which is apparently a New England IPA. It's quite strong as well. So that's what I'll be drinking. I'll be on my best behavior, of course. What about yourself, Pete? What are you having?
So I've gone with a bit of an old classic for me, the Ringwood Brewery 49er, a golden ale. It's really easy going, nice and light, but has a bit of a punch at 4.9%.
Oh, 4.9%. That's a proper drink.
It is, and you wouldn't know it drinking it. It goes down very easily.
Well, tonight I would have had my absolute favourite, but we didn't have any because I drank them last week. And it's a beer that you may or may not know. It's pretty potent. It's 6%, and it's called Innis and Gunn. Do you know it?
I know it. Yeah.
It's really sweet. They do it in different. You can get a dark one, a gold one, and it's really, really lovely out of the bottle. And I was a bit gutted that I didn't have one this evening to drink with you guys. So I'm slumming it on finishing halfway through my second can of Stella, which is, not the most salubrious, but it's quite refreshing. I've been doing a lot of talking on the phone today with just finishing that recent clip I've done, the YouTube clip.
Yeah.
I've had lots of emails and phone calls, and, I do like to try and people asking questions on bait and presentation and tactics. Not always just bait, but often on tactical presentation for fishing. And so I've done a lot of talking, and so I had a rest and a break for a couple of hours. Had a nice long bath, which was lovely, and I'm back ready for our chat and been looking forward to it.
Good, good. So have we. So have we. There's a lot of different things that we want to ask you, of course. Whether we'll get through it or not, remains to be seen. I think if we start with, if we may, putting something to bed, which might be good for you, actually, because I imagine you get a lot of questions about this. There's a lot of different conjecture and talk about who gave who, which recipe between you and Rod. Are you able to clear all that up once and for all for us?
I can clear the whole thing up very easily. In 1977, now that seems a long time ago, but it doesn't seem a long time ago to me for some reason. I've got a pretty good memory recall. I was about 4 years into researching flavours, bearing in mind that in 1974, I was 20. So I was born in 54. When I was about 21, 22, I started to write to flavour companies. There was no internet, and I wanted to know more about flavours after using some vanilla flavour that my mother had used to flavour a Victorian sponge cake. And she said, why don't you try this in your bait for carp? So I said, oh, they won't eat that. And I did try a few drops, and I did catch some fish on vanilla flavour, and it was a bit groundbreaking. So I thought, well, what else can you get? And in the local supermarket, there was very little in there to choose from, very basic things. So I went to a central library, looked up in the reference section, companies that made flavours. I found one in Edmonton, North London, called Rayner's. And I found one of the biggest companies in the world, actually, based in Haverhill in Suffolk, called IFF, International Flavours and Fragrances. They're still there, still in Suffolk. But it's very difficult to get an account with them now because you have to order tens of thousands of pounds worth of flavour from them in one go. And they've bought about 20 other flavour companies since the early 70s. They've acquired nearly all the major flavour houses in the world. So they're a very big company. Anyway, I wrote to the managing director of this lot, and he replied. And that started the cycle of me having a hobby interest in flavours. And then a year later, I was approached by a businessman, and we started Bait 78, which is one of the first bait companies. Mm-hmm. And it was brilliant. And I was able to use my ideas, and we made flavours. We blended flavours together and made base mixes and sold individual ingredients. And then a couple of years passed by. I didn't want to sell bait anymore because it was interfering with my fishing. And there were people against it then. Can you believe it? People didn't like me being associated with any sort of commercialism. So when I went fishing, people were critical of me. And I didn't like it because I was young. I couldn't deal with it. So I stopped all connection with commercial bait and just did it as a hobby. So by the time came to 1980-81, when I'd done the rounds of syndicate waters and joined Savay Lake, who did I meet? But my old friend Jeff Kemp, who was still selling a few flavours out of Essex, and who I'd helped, and we'd helped each other, sharing ideas. And I met Rod. And all around that time, I was still in contact with various companies, including one in South London called Perleron. And Perleron had some flavours there which were quite interesting, one of which was I don't know what it was used in, but it was a bakery flavour. And I think it was used in icing. And it was a sort of very buttery, caramelly type of flavour. And I just asked for some samples, which aren't always easy to get. And they sent me these samples through. I tried them in a paste and caught fish immediately. And I told Rod about this flavour, which was very sickly and cloying, like a buttery, almost cheesy type of flavour, but it wasn't cheesy. It was like a creamy, buttery flavour. And it had certain lactones and diketones in it, which are aroma compounds, which produce this sort of sickly taste and smell. And we don't know why these things work, and Rod was interested in it. So I gave him some. And he was, of course, doing bait for a living, and I wasn't. And I was still researching it purely for fun, because I'd started a real career in finance then, and I decided that finance was my proper career. Fishing was my hobby. And eventually Rod and Albert Bromp and all the original Looney Roaster team from Savo used to go to the pub, have a few beers, go for a curry. And I spilt the beans and let Rod know where to get this. And I even gave him the code number of the flavour. And of course, within weeks, he brought it out the Scopex. And I said to him, Rod, you brought it out already as a flavour. He said, well, I've got to do it for a living. And I said, oh, I don't mind. And I genuinely didn't really mind, because I was in that wonderful position where I wasn't earning a living from fishing, so it didn't impact on my life. And around about that same time, I'd also found another flavour, which has got a whole different set of stories to it, which was called salmon flavour, pucker salmon, and another one called maple. And basically, in the end, we ended up sharing where these came from, what the code numbers were, but we didn't really look at why they worked. Rod used that salmon flavour and called it pucker salmon, and I was buying it as well and selling it direct to friends. I sold it to all the Redmire pool syndicate, Pete Springate, Peter Moen, I can't remember all their names now, but there was Kevin Maddox, Keith Gillings, Lenny Middleton, and this was all around the time when the hair rig was invented. So we had unbelievable flavours, unbelievable hair rigs, new technology, carbon fibre rods. It was all new in a compounded 2 to 3 year term, and it was mega. Every time you went to the bank, someone had something new, really new. So it was really pivotal. So those flavours I gave them away. But I did make Rod a promise, and I said, I'll never sell it, even though I know where you get it, and I'll never tell anyone where it comes from. And I haven't. And then when he died, bless his cotton socks, I thought, well, I'll make it, because 40 years later, 30 years later, I know what the recipe is, because I've learned an awful lot about flavour since then. So I make it myself. And it's called Topex, not Scopex. I won't call it Scopex. It's called Topex.
So this will be, a lot of people's ears will be pricking up right now, because obviously might not be obvious to you, but there's huge amounts of talks. In fact, I'm sure it's very obvious to you. There's a lot of talk about, Scopex, it can't be made how it was, because obviously, maybe certain things aren't available, blah, 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 blah. Lots of people kind of speculate about this. So is your Topex 100% the same as the original Scopex that Rod brought out and that you gave to him, or has it had to change slightly due to different regulations, etc.?
As far as I know, it's not the same, but it's got all the same ingredients in it. When you try and copy a flavour, what you can't do, it's very difficult to do, is to copy it precisely. So I know what the ingredients are. There's not very many, actually, in the flavour. There's about 18 different aroma ingredients. And you know what? I'm going to tell you what some of them are. It's got a little bit of butyric acid in it, a little bit of caproic acid in it, a tiny, tiny amount of isovaleric acid in it. That's 3 organic acids, but in minute quantities. It's got some milk lactones in, which I won't go into. You can look them up on the internet, lactones. They're aroma compounds. And it's got a little bit of diacetyl in it. Now that is not a base, it's an aroma ingredient, and it's very buttery. It was banned in America. That's why initially people thought that diacetyl as an aroma ingredient was banned in England. It isn't. You can still buy it. But to get the proportions exactly correct, you have to have the main recipe. So that recipe, I've only given you four or five ingredients. There's about 12 or 13 more. So the honest answer to your question is I cannot guarantee it's exactly the same, but it's damn close. And probably there are other things that we've learned since then which can create a slightly better profile flavour of that nature. In other words, we know more about some of the aroma ingredients. I certainly know more, which means that we can make a more robust flavour which doesn't boil out, which handles well when you mix it in a boilie that's been out all night in a freezing cold lake. You know, these are the qualities that a good flavour should have. So the answer to your question is, it's as close as I can make it, but you'll never get it exactly the same. But all the ingredients that were originally used in the original Scopex flavour are definitely legal, and they're all still available.
There we go. That clears that up.
Can't be used in America, can be used in England. It's not very nice stuff. It's quite strong, but then a lot of these aroma ingredients are strong. If you were to taste a lot of aroma compounds on their own, they taste really weird, but they only start to react when you mix them with other things. So a little catalyst takes place, a little reaction takes place with some of these flavors, and they sort of blossom. It's fascinating.
It's synergy, isn't it, I suppose, which we've spoken about before. Just quickly, before we move on to that, your Top-X, is that more, I know a lot of your flavors are very concentrated. Is your Top-X more concentrated than the Scopex you were using back then?
I would say it probably is a bit stronger, yeah. Maybe 30 to 40% stronger.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
I won't dilute any of my flavors, because it's tempting to dilute flavors from a profit point of view, but I won't do that, because if you dilute them, then you're going to use more solvent. If you put more solvent in a bait, it doesn't taste very nice. So the less flavor you use, if it's concentrated, you're also using less solvent.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which means you don't need a sweetener, and you don't need to put other things in to counteract the taste of the solvents. Yeah, absolutely. Got you. And was it you that named it Scopex? No.
Would you know where that came about? A lot of people say it was scope for experiment, and there's all different ideas about it.
I have no idea. I mean, Rod was fantastic on coming up with good ideas for names. I mean, he was completely in the zone. He did it for a living, and he was living the dream. So some of the names of the bits and pieces he came up with, flavors, base mixes, wonderful carp angler's mind. So no, I've no idea where the name came from. There was another one actually called Maltrex.
Yeah.
Which somebody wrote to me yesterday about. Yeah, there was one called Maltrex, which he did. I've no idea what that was, but it could have been Scopex with a bit of malt extract in it.
Yeah.
Like a Horlicksy, like a Horlicksy types.
Maltrex, I've seen that one floating around social media. A lot of these flavors that are going for silly money now. I think that's one of the ones that's been doing the rounds for sure, was the Maltrex.
Yeah, it's a bit bizarre. Probably highlighted and becoming more sort of prominent and happening because of lockdown and people with time on their hands, doing some research, feeling a bit nostalgic. Somebody called me actually the other day, not on the subject of using really old flavors, which we can touch on again in a minute if you like. I don't mind speaking about the use of old flavors. And they'd got one of my old base mixes, and I couldn't believe what the guy said. He said, "Oh, I found a kilo of your old base mix." For the life of me, I can't remember which one it was now, but it was one that I made about 14 years ago. And he said, it's 14 years old, will it still be any good? Have you ever tried to, I said to him, have you ever tried to eat a 14-year-old's biscuit?
Yeah, he's brave, isn't he? And optimistic.
So people do keep stuff for years, absolutely years.
Yeah, there's a lot on the, I mean, it's going for crazy money, absolutely crazy money, a lot of this stuff, which is, it's a bit silly, isn't it?
It is a bit silly.
Yeah, I spoke about that sometime last year and upset a lot of people, actually. People kind of get really defensive about that kind of thing. There's a real kind of cult following of buying old flavors. And the thing is, I think they obviously do still catch carp. And I don't think that's the argument, is it? It's just that if you had a fresher flavor that wasn't denatured, it wasn't damaged, it's just going to be much more efficient. And I think that's the argument that kind of gets a little bit twisted, because their argument is, of course, well, it still catches carp. There's a few companies, and some run by some really nice guys, by the way, but there's a few companies that specialize in these older flavors and creating hook baits from them. I don't think anyone's saying that they wouldn't catch carp. I think the argument is that they're past their best, to say the least.
They are past their best. In all fairness, if you're keen and enthusiastic and you want to put that energy, money, thought process, call it what you will, into using an old flavor in a hook bait mix or whatever, then it's fine, absolutely fine, crack on, you do it. But all I can say is, if I showed you a flavor which was 10 years old, and then I showed you the identical flavor that was new, it would be chalk and cheese. It would, the fresh flavor would smell, even to the most basic, inexperienced nose, if you like, it would smell fantastic compared to one that's a few years old. I'll give you an example of that, actually. I had a flavour here which ended up being about 9 years old. I won't say what the flavour was, but it was one that I've been repeatedly asked to do. Actually, I will say which one it is. It's one called grilled bacon. There's a load of barbel anglers have been on and on and on at me to do this. And it is mega difficult to get it made, because it has to be made exclusively. And anyway, as it just so happens, the company that made it for me, which is the same company that makes my Ala Salah flavour, they're a top company, but you have to order a minimum amount. Each order has to be 100 kilos. So I said, I'll order 100 kilos. And they said, no, even if you order 200 kilos, we still won't make it, because we just simply don't make it anymore. I said, is it compliant? They said, it was a special flavour made for a very large company. They no longer want it, so we don't buy the raw materials in to make it. So I gave the flavour, which was a good 8-9 years old, to somebody who is a very close friend of mine, who I've known for 30 years, and he is a master of flavours. He actually is one of only 10 people in Europe with this level of qualification. So he would be the equivalent of a professor of flavours. He looked at this for me, and I said, can you copy it? Can you put it through a mass spectrometer and a gas chromatograph? These are the two machines that will synthesize and analyze and identify the peaks and troughs of aroma compounds and main chemicals in a flavour. I don't know if anyone will have heard of these machines before, but anyone who's really interested in chemistry or flavours will have heard of these two machines. Yeah. And I'll repeat them again: gas chromatograph, mass spectrometry. So those two. And we tried it, and he looked at it, but he said, we're wasting our time because I can already smell that it's off. I can't match the perfection of this flavour because it's lost all its characteristics over time. So if he's saying that, I have to listen. If a master of flavours is telling me that a 9-year-old flavour is shot, is finished, then it probably would still catch fish. And so it's a never-ending discussion, isn't it, really? Personally, I would rather use something that I can use again and get again. So as long as I can buy it again or make it again, why would I want to use something that I'm unlikely to ever be able to get again once I've used it?
Definitely. It makes sense, doesn't it? And yeah, definitely makes sense. Just to backtrack a little bit, because I know people will you know, they'll shoot me if I don't ask this. When we're talking about different flavors that were shared with Rod, Monster Crab, was that one that you had some involvement in as well?
Yes, that came from a sister company of that other large company I mentioned called IFF. And this flavour involves a wonderful character called Duncan Kay. And Duncan Kay had the Mid-Northants fishery up near Rushden. And he dealt with a company that was the managing director of the company, was the brother of the managing director of the IFF, International Flavours and Fragrances. And that company was called Barnett and Foster. And Barnett and Foster made a crab flavour, which I had heard about and got a tiny sample of through Duncan Kay, who sadly is no longer with us. And I casually mentioned that Rod was looking for a fishy flavour, and my only connection with crab in this particular instance was that I said to him, you might want to try Barnett and Foster in Northamptonshire. I think they've got a flavour that might interest you. And the mark of a good businessman is that you act on a lead. And within weeks, he'd got this flavour, which actually wasn't crab flavour. It was shellfish. It was called a shellfish flavour. And it was so potent, you could smell Rod coming into the car park at Savoy before he opened the car. It was that strong. And he actually had it made into a powder, and it went into his seafood mix. He did a mix called Seafood Blend, and it went into the powder, into that base mix. So I had an involvement in that, but I knew where it came from. So, of course, I phoned them separately, completely individually, and said, can I have 20 kilos, please? Yes, of course you can. So I bought it separately, and a few years later, I sold it for about 10 years. And then it too became a victim of EEC food regulations, and it's gone forever. So I kept some back, and I had it copied by my master flavorist guy. And it's not identical to the other one, but it's as close as I can get it.
That's your current crab.
That's the current crab flavor. Yeah, it's pretty horrible. It stinks. It still gets in your hair and in your clothes. You have to, if you bottle it up, if I bottle 50 bottles of crab flavor into the little 100ml bottles, I have to take all my clothes off before I go in the house, and then go straight into the shower and wash my hair and wash thoroughly. And my clothes have to go straight into the washing machine. It's still got those. It's got some things in called pyrazines, which are nasty little things, very powerful chemicals. But we think it was good because it mimics some of the ammonia and the urea and the peptides given off by shellfish, and basically the feces that fish and emergent and semi-emergent life give off, or in an aquatic environment, which is one of the biggest draws to carp, because if a fish is urinating and defecating in the water, it's eating. If bloodworms, snails, or other even invertebrates, they're all giving off all these various peptides and signals, urea, waste matter, and that's a signal to feeding carp. So there are definitely, we have identified in the last 10, 15 years, I have identified with a friend who's a chemist, another chemist, a different guy, a chap called Malcolm Berry, who's now a professor actually. We've found some chemicals which mimic some of the things that appear in the environment. And amazingly, we've found some more chemicals that actually appear in fruit, which perform in the same way. That's the first time I've given that piece of information out.
Well, thank you. And by obviously you don't need to answer this. Are you able to divulge what these chemicals are, or at least what they mimic, and what kind of receptor sites on the carp would pick these up?
So the main receptor sites on the carp will pick it up all in the head area, which is where their most sensitive taste buds are.
So it's gustatory response.
Yeah.
It's not smell.
Yeah. I think they've got to touch it. Obviously, the main thing is when it gets to the pocket inside the mouth where the main taste receptors are, where they're multiplied thousands of times. Actually, some electron microscope photography was carried out by a university in Italy, and they found that the taste receptors on older carp, and particularly larger carp, multiply with age. So unlike human beings, whose taste and smell deteriorates with age, your eyesight goes, your hearing goes. Because of genetic evolution, carp specifically appear to be better at evaluating and sensing their environment the older they get. And that is, again, one of the first times I've said this out there in public. It's a series of papers that we've located, which are enormously difficult to find. They are out there, so if anyone's interested, you can search about and find them. But this is a piece of research which is pivotal, and so we often let me take two paces back. I'll tell you a quick story. Several times, myself and a couple of friends I've shared baits and flavours with, combinations of baits and flavours, which are unusual combinations, have gone to a fishery for the first time, or specifically when I've been invited as a guest, and without being specific and without wanting to sound big-headed, because I don't do a great deal of fishing these days. I have done, but I don't do so much fishing now because A, I haven't got time, and B, there's a limit to how many fish. When you're in your mid-60s, there's a limit to how many carp you actually want to catch in the rest of your career. So now it's all about the quality as opposed to the quantity for me. But I have caught a few in my life. But very often it kept cropping up that I was going for either a week's fishing to France, fishing a lake I'd never fished before, or a guest trip to a syndicate lake in Cambridge, or a guest trip in the West Country, or whatever. And I'd often catch either the biggest or one of the biggest fish in the lake that doesn't come out very often. And it kept happening. And it happened with my friends as well. And they'd say, you know, that flavour that you made for me in that base mix, I caught two of the biggest fish in the lake the first 3 weeks I used it. So we started to put two and two together, and we thought, why is this happening? It's all very well and good. I mean, these guys are good anglers, but friends of mine, but there must be something in it. And we think that the fish have this ability, and this is using incredibly low flavour levels. So you're getting a better hook hold, the fish are taking the bait further back into their mouth, etc., etc. And we think these fish have got an inbuilt instinctive ability to, if you like, almost instantly analyse and decide actually decide quite quickly through curiosity, feeding curiosity, you could call it, that they want to evaluate and taste this foodstuff that is presented in a bait quicker and faster, and it appeals to them, and so they take it into their mouth. When they see things which they don't particularly like, it doesn't spend much time in their mouth, or it never even goes in there. They won't eat it.
So this substance, is this in any of your current flavors, or is this something that you're working on releasing?
It's not one substance. It's a multiple.
Yeah, substances.
It's multiple substances. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's loosely based around the following concept, and the concept is this: carp are millions of years old. They've evolved over millions and millions of years. Cyprinoids have evolved over millions of years. We believe they originally came from the Middle East, not particularly China, I don't think, but let's assume they came from the Central Eastern Hemisphere, and then they gradually gravitated their way on the Silk Road north, and they came into the stew ponds and monasteries up in the Northern Hemisphere as food. And so, there's no argument that carp have been on the planet a long time. So it stands to reason they have a full understanding of their environment. And that means they will have eaten everything that enters the water, even if it doesn't live in water. They'll be able to instinctively evaluate everything that goes into the water long before anglers existed or people were on the earth. So my view is that they will have eaten blackberries, wild strawberries. They will have eaten elderberries, and I've caught roach and chub on elderberries that have fallen in the river. I've caught them on the River Lee in Hertfordshire on elderberries in the 70s. So they will definitely have eaten wild plums. They would have definitely eaten any other fruit all over the world that will have fallen in the water, and over millions of years developed the ability to establish that fruit is edible. Most animals eat fruit. Most omnivores eat fruit, and carp are omnivores. Bears are omnivores, and they eat lots of berries. So I think that when we are using, this is recent research that I've been doing. I think that when we use various different types of fruit flavor with the whole spectrum of the main components that are present in a fruit, which are represented by aroma compounds in the recipe, I actually believe that the fish are genetically recognizing them. They are instinctively recognizing these as potentially edible foods because they're used to finding fruits in nature, in their diet, and so it's inbuilt in them. This has never been discussed before. It's a perfectly reasonable concept, and I believe this is one of the reasons why some flavors which have a faithful representation of that which appears in nature and are good quality, I think these are the ones that are more effective than ones of a lesser quality. They all work, everything works. So I'm not bemoaning or criticizing anyone else's products, and I must stress that. But my view is, if you can afford and if you know where to go to get these really high quality products produced for you and you're prepared to invest in them, then why not use them? And if you do use them, you don't need much.
Are you talking about esters here, or is it something a little bit more complex than that?
More complex, but esters would fall into that category. Yes. Yes, esters, lactones, decalactones, aldehydes, types of oleoresin, types of essential oils, extracts. These are all the categories and subcategories that would go together into aroma compounds.
Yeah. Are you able to name these chemicals that you're referring to, or is it something you'd rather keep to yourself?
I would rather keep the names of them to myself at the moment.
No problem. No problem.
If that's okay.
Of course it is. Yeah. And I mean, your plum flavor, it's one of the flavors that we use in our very soon upcoming range. It's just one of those flavors that just seems to keep on producing. It's been very, very kind to me. Does that contain anything that would link up with what you're talking about, or is this really kind of new, fresh stuff?
No, that contains at least 8 or 9 of these key ingredients.
Yeah.
People say to me, why don't you do a strawberry flavour? Well, I'd love to do a strawberry flavour. And you've asked a very fair question, you know, does the plum flavour contain some of these ingredients? And it does. But because I spent thousands of pounds to buy the international property rights to the recipe, you can imagine I'm a little bit guarded on saying, you know, what's in it. It actually, you know, amazes me that people that are prepared to spend £100 on a bottle of 15-year-old flavour could phone me and I'd make them something which was awesome if they wanted to spend £100 on a 100ml bottle of flavour. And I could make them something that no one else could possibly copy or know about, and I could make it for them again and again and again. But no one's phoned me and asked me to do that. They phoned me and asked me if I'll supply them 10 litres of alisalar, because they were all boilies, and 10 litres of plum, and 10 litres of Topex, and 10 litres of something else, because they can't get this anywhere else. So, but it's taken me 40 years to get the recipes right. So you can imagine how, when I express it in that way, there's a lot of passion in what I say, but there's an awful lot of hard work gone into it.
Do you know what? I can feel a podcast special flavor coming on. we might call you for that for that type of service, John. Don't count it out yet. I mean, whilst we're on the subject of plum, I wanted to ask you this anyway. I might as well kind of jump ahead and cover it now. Is there anything else other than what you've just kind of alluded to that makes the plum so good? What is it about John Baker plum?
Well, when it was designed by a master flavorist, the same guy that I spoke about earlier. And it was designed by a company that made pucker salmon. They're called Bushbo Callan. They used to be in Walthamstow. Yeah. And to get all the aroma chemicals exactly right, you know, the ones that you might smell in September and October when you buy a punnet of fresh plums from Sainsbury's, you know, when the Victoria plums come into the market, because the flavour itself is actually Victoria plum flavour. So you will have chemicals that are present in the skin and chemicals that are present in the flesh, and even chemicals that are present in the stone and the pip. And all that comes through. And that also changes when they become very ripe. And you'll notice that birds will ignore the orange pyracantha berries in the autumn, and then suddenly they'll eat them. And they'll only do that when they've been frosted, because some sort of chemical process takes place which renders the poison, the toxins that are in them, edible. So there's lots going on in a fruit. So what this company did is they grew fruits, and the ones I know that they grew specifically were plum, strawberry and raspberry. And they captured the smells and measured them in their delicate equipment. And they were able to identify all the different aroma compounds that were being given off by the growing plant. Then they liquidized the fruit and took the flavors off that. So plum has been made by analyzing the real growing fruit and taking the best components out of that and making them up in the laboratory with a nature identical flavor. So you have 3 categories of flavor compound: nature identical, artificial and natural. if you put a natural compound together in a boilie, this is for boilies specifically, they're not that great because they boil out. So those flavours will be used in yogurts or any foodstuffs which aren't heated. What we want with a boilie recipe is something that will withstand the boiling process and mix okay with horrible smelling ingredients, and then still smell when you've frozen it for a month or 2 months or 6 months. So plum flavour ticked all the boxes. And again, it was one I found by accident. And then when I asked how it was produced, that was the story I got. So you can imagine, all this, there's a timeline involved in all this. It doesn't just happen overnight. I can now ask the questions when I speak to companies, and they don't often tell you. They're the same as me. I ask a company, well, what's the core ingredients? What's this? What's that? And they won't tell me. But fortunately, I don't need to worry about that now, because you can buy books. There's one particular book called the Source Book of Flavours. It's available on the internet. It's about 600 pages, and all the aroma ingredients that are possible in all the different flavours are listed in there. And you can look all that lot up in a book, and you can also look all of them up on the internet. They're all there, but it just takes hundreds of hours to evaluate it all. And that's what I've done, in little bursts of enthusiasm in between having a life. I've been to libraries before computers came into our lives, and spent hundreds of hours looking at books and finding out all this stuff. So I knew what I was ordering. I wasn't satisfied to just find out because someone told me that this is the business and this is really good, and this is the plum flavour they sell and they're very happy with it. I wasn't going to be happy with that. I wanted to know that a fruit flavour I'm buying has got certain components in it. Now I've got the luxury of being able to say, can you make me a flavour with the following recipe? And the peach one that I'm waiting for now to be made has got 36 ingredients in it, and I know every single one of them. I know what they are. I didn't put the recipe together for peach, but I did it in conjunction with the flavourist, so we did it together. So this is beginning now to perhaps show people out there who are interested in this the level and intensity of effort that I've gone to, because most people would have no idea why on earth somebody that spent a lifetime in banking and financial services has carried on researching flavours well into their 60s, and I'm still doing it.
It's certainly like, bait. I mean, obviously you're on the next level, but bait making as a whole, it's like a different hobby that's separate from fishing, isn't it? It's like its own hobby. It's its own thing. So yeah.
Oh, I'm much more interested in bait than I am in fishing.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's not just to catch more fish, is it? It's like its own thing.
No.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, here's a hard question for you. It's just popped into my head. If you had to only fish, and it's a little bit of a childish question, but we'll roll with it anyway. If you could only use one of your flavors forevermore, which one would you choose and why?
Well, it would be can I have two?
I'll give you two, John. I'll give you two. Yeah, go on.
Give me two. I was actually asked this question on another podcast with the guys from Corda, and I said straight away, I said, if it's just one, it'd have to be maple. But now I said that, I slightly regret it, because overall I prefer using savoury baits, because so many people use fruity and creamy flavours and spicy flavours, which I rate highly, but it's the savoury ones that seem to go by the wayside. So I'd have to say that if I was using a sweet early season type bait, and it was one flavour, it would have to be TM1, which has got maple in it, 10% maple TM1's got. But then when the water warms up and I want to use my savoury recipes, then it would have to be a la Solar. It would have to be.
I listened to the Corda one, and I didn't pick up on that. Sorry, you've already done that. Your maple is, I've used that for many years, and again, it features in one of our hook baits. Very, very good. I've got the TM1 as well, which I've experimented with. Very, very strong flavour, isn't it? Very concentrated, that TM1.
Yeah. Guess what? It's got Scopex in it.
Is it? Yeah, it's that kind of thing, isn't it? And I think probably your Milky One shares some of the same kind of lactones and that kind of thing, right?
It does. Yeah. It does. Yeah. Yeah. That's got a couple of decalactones in it, which are 10 times strength lactones. Yeah. Very powerful.
Hence the deca. Yeah.
In fact, I spilt some TM1 today.
Oh no.
I haven't done this for about 7 or 8 years. I dropped a 5-litre container of TM1 that I just blended together.
Jeez.
And I caught it as it bounced, but the top was off.
Oh no.
And about 400 mil went all up the door in my workshop, over the floor, over my feet, on my trousers. Oh my God. I smell like a biscuit factory this evening, even though I've had a shower. It's all over my hands. Can't get it off.
Worse. It could have been monster crab.
It could have been a la Solar or crab.
Crab.
Yeah.
Jeez. Pete, are you still there? I've been hogging John. Have you got anything to add to what we've covered so far, mate?
Yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying the conversation. To what we've already discussed, something that's sort of I've considered, I guess, over recent time, the last sort of 24 months, it's something that people have often asked us on the podcast as well, is when people are making hook baits or they're making their mixes and they're adding their own organic acids to flavours. So, for example, earlier you were talking about your Topex and M-butyric, Proic, I think isovaleric as well.
Yes.
You mentioned if people are adding their own organic acids to hook baits, can they be doing themselves a disservice?
Yes. Well, these are individual aroma component compounds which are supposed to be used in dilution. And they actually work better in synergy when they're pre-mixed with something else. If you put them straight in neat on their own, even if you're putting them in with the eggs, they'll still work and the profile will come through. But it's very tempting and easy to overdose them. So consequently, an awful lot of people that use, there's a common denominator of aroma compounds. One of them is a common essential oil, which is so commonly used, the fish must recognize it on every water in the country, and that's black pepper. Mm-hmm. And the other one is butyric. And even though I've sort of spoken to people sometimes over a period of a month before they decide perhaps on a recipe, and it could be a base mix that is their own base mix, and they want a flavor profile to go in, I send them a flavor or a blend of flavors and recommend the dose rate, and then they take the flavor, they put it in their own base mix or one of my base mixes or somebody else's base mix for hook baits. Mm-hmm. Specifically, as you said, particularly at this time of year with people just using small amounts of bait when they're fishing, which is fair enough. And then they email me and they say, I've got all the flavors and I've got it all together and I've made the bait. How much butyric acid do you think I should put with this? And I just say to them, don't put any with it, because it's all done. The base mix is done. You know, the flavor blend is done. If you're going to put the recommended dose rate of flavors in that I've said, then you'll have to halve them. And have you got any very accurate syringes or pipettes to measure the butyric? Yes, blah blah blah. So you're going to be talking about sort of 1 drop maximum to an egg. The thing is, there's been a lot of writing about this, about using very high levels of this, and I'm going to preempt another question which might follow on from this. If you're using a hair rig and you're using a grossly over-flavoured bait. I mean, for example, there's a couple of guys in Birmingham have been using 6 mil to 1 egg, 6 mil of plum to 1 egg. I mean, I use 1 mil of plum to 6 eggs.
Is that hook baits or feed bait? That's hook baits, right?
Hook baits.
Yeah.
Hook baits. 6 mil of plum to 1 egg. And they're catching fish.
Plum is a very strong flavour, isn't it? As well.
Very strong. Very strong. I mean, that's a completely over the top dose rate. And I said to them, when you're using this, do you often get bites straight away? And they say, no, not very often. Usually it's after a few hours, but sometimes we've had them straight away. I said, do you lose many fish? Well, yeah, we get lots of bites, and we do lose a few. And I think they're not getting very good hook holds. I think what's happening is that the fish are taking the bait in and blowing it out, and they're snagging the fish on ejection.
Yeah, definitely. Just because it's too overwhelming once it gets within the mouth cavity, you mean?
Yes. The thing is, I have caught fish on one-off trips and guest trips and abroad for a week where that's it. You're never going to go back to the lake again. So you're in France. You've done a whole lake booking. You've got 6 mates with you. You can do what you want. Yeah, I will use bait, both freebies and hook baits, which are slightly stronger than I would use in England on my regular venues. But I've come to the conclusion that even on the busiest French waters, if we ever get a chance to go back there, the lower flavour levels get you better hook holds. I think the fish are just more confident in taking it back and eating it.
Do they get you more intakes, so? Do they get you more takes or not? As in sucks, as in bites?
I think so. Yeah. I think so. I'm very impatient, so I want bites. I'm the world's most impatient carp angler. In actual fact, the only reason I became really interested in making my own bait was because I am so impatient. I wanted a result that I was in complete control, and I'm a control freak. So I wanted to be completely in control myself. And I can tell you, and subsequently, I guess, everyone who's listening, I can put my hand on my heart and say this: I have never used a bait that I haven't made myself since I was 16.
Wow. That's
50 years. I've never used anyone else's bait in my life. In fact, I wouldn't go fishing unless I could make my own bait.
Crikey.
Seriously.
Not many people can say that. I reckon you're probably on your own on that one.
Well, it's true.
Don't doubt it. Yeah.
Those people that know me will also know that I don't often lie. Everyone lies. It's a human trait. You're economical with the truth, perhaps. Lying is a bit of a strong word to say, isn't it? But most people, it's in our nature to be, to gild the lily, to be a little bit, tell a tall story, make it sound better than it really is, whatever it is. But I'm quite a truthful person, and I suppose I could prefix that by saying that when ready-made baits first came out, I was very friendly with Bob Baker down at Richworth Baits. I knew him really well, I fished with him at Savay. And occasionally he'd send me 10 kilo when I was going to France in the early days when we were pioneering and you couldn't go to a lake where there was a freezer and all the rest of it. So we needed some shelf life baits as well as taking our particles with us. But I always made my hook baits at home and took them. But for freebies, I occasionally rang Bob at Richworth and he would send me some ready-made boilies. And we did that 2 or 3 times for our trips to France. But then after that, we bought the freezers that you can plug into the 12-volt connector in the back of the car, and you can keep bait fresh all week, keep it frozen all week in the back of the car. brilliant little. They're quite expensive. They're about 400 quid. But yeah, you can be self-sufficient, go to France and have fresh bait all week, make it yourself. So that's what I've been doing for many years.
That's a game changer, isn't it? That's a definite game changer. Just to build on what you were saying about, people asking, how much embuteric or citric acid should I add, etc. And it's already in the flavors. When it comes to mixing a couple of flavors together, obviously there's room for overdoing certain compounds, etc. Are there any? I mean, of course, trial and error, is the key, isn't it? Let the carp tell you what works and what doesn't. But are there any golden rules or do's or don'ts that you're aware of when it comes to mixing a couple of flavors together?
I don't think flavors are too much of a problem. I think it's the additives that worry me most. So you mentioned citric acid. That's become a bit trendy. Carp are attracted to citric acid, and but only tiny amounts. So this might surprise you. Yes, that they are attracted quite strongly to it, but you're talking about probably 1 gram in a kilo is all you need.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people putting one hell of a lot more than 1 gram in.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what effect that actually has. And also, when you boil a lot of these, you've got to have a carrier for the flavor. So when you boil something, you are very often sealing in a lot of the flavor. So you can get away with a quarter of the level of flavor if you use a paste, and then you're also then not boiling the base mix, so you're not denaturing any of the ingredients at all. And a lot of the top barbel anglers and carp anglers who use milk proteins, they just use paste. I don't know if you know that. They don't use boilers at all. They only use paste. They've got it to such a perfected art that it's paste only.
I use a lot of paste.
They're really getting a...
Sorry, John.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I use a lot of paste for carp. Stalking, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't chuck out some paste on a coil overnight. But stalking carp, I'll use some paste. Yeah, definitely. I think there's certain times a year that's probably more effective than others. But yeah, definitely.
Certainly, I do a lot of float fishing. But going back to your question on flavor blends, I think if you start low and you keep a careful note of what you've put in your mix. Let's take a typical this time of year, so a nice open textured seed mix, a nice seedy mix with some bird food in and some nice calf milk powder in, maybe a little bit of spice, natural spice extract, something really open textured, and a bit of tiger nut flour or peanut meal, something like that. A lovely early season bait. They can easily digest. So you're going to use maybe a fruit and cream blend, or maybe an essential oil and fruit blend, or an essential oil and cream blend, anything like that. I think that's brilliant this time of year, those sorts of combinations, and I would definitely use those. But I think the trick is to do your sessions, whatever it is you're doing, and then go low. And then, if you're getting bites, leave it as it is. If you think that more flavor is going to get you more bites quicker, depending on the frequency of your visits to the lake, the length of your session, the pressure from other anglers, nuisance fish pecking away at the bait, there's all these things got to be taken into account. And then, you can gradually build up the flavor level until it matches your expectations and matches the bite performance. So rather than being rigid on one dose rate, to answer your question fairly, I think you just need to be in tune with all those tactical aspects before being too rigid about how much and in what quantities you should be using all the ingredients. And definitely, once you've put something in, you can't take it out. So I think caution is the watchword.
Definitely. Are there any particular organic acids? I mean, obviously, there's loads of them. Is there any that interest you more than the general citric, butyric, etc.?
Yeah, there are a few tiny little components of organic acids present in some of the flavors I use. But I would say in general, there's, I mean, the pyrazines are linked to types of organic acid, so that you could say that was one, but you certainly don't want to be mucking about with that. That's the most horrendous thing you'll ever smell. It's in fact, I'm not too sure if that's available to the public. Pyrogloric acid, yeah, that's a pretty horrendous one. So no, I wouldn't. I think you have to be very careful playing about with individual aroma ingredients. The thing is, why do you want to do it? That's unless you're working in conjunction with a qualified flavorist who can say to you, yeah, that's fine, we can put this with this and this with this. So you've got a little bit of help. I've been lucky, I've got some help from two chemists, so I can run it by them first. So if anyone's really interested in taking their flavor development knowledge further, please do it in conjunction with a qualified person. And then you're going to save yourself hundreds of hours of fiddling around.
Yeah, here's one that I think will perhaps stir something in you. TMA, TMAO, it's been spoken about a lot on and off over the years, and its inclusion or maybe not its inclusion in certain flavors. What are your thoughts on TMA, TMAO?
Several people have been asking me. Yeah, some people have been asking me about this product.
Yeah.
Some people say that it's used regularly by lots of different people. You can look it all up on the internet. It's a powerful aroma compound. Do I think it makes a big difference when it's included in an overall flavor recipe? It might. It doesn't really appear in unless I'm unaware of it in any of my recipes as an individual compound. It's not on any of my ingredient lists.
See, a lot of people would say that it's a key component of that kind of fishy type aroma, which is ambiguous, isn't it? Because there's many fishy type aromas. But a lot of people would say it's absolute key to, some classic squid and octopus, salmon flavors. It's kind of believed that it's in many, many fishy flavors to varying degrees. Whereas I think you have a difference of opinion. You're saying it's not as widely used as perhaps some people would think. Is that right?
I think it's, I'm going to be a bit controversial now. I think it's used in some of the cheaper ones. How about that one? It's a bit of a showstopper, isn't it?
I like that one. No, I like it. I like a bit of controversy. And I hope you're swinging back your stutters so you can open up on it. But so you obviously don't deem it as something that's particularly attractive to carp. I mean, in the past, be honest, me and Pete, we've been guilty of looking to TMA and looking into that and kind of thinking maybe there's some mileage in amping that side of things up. But I mean, you clearly think that there's better compounds to be putting into a flavor base or a bait to yield better results, right?
Yes. Yeah, and if you look a little bit more deeply into some of the products that are used, some of them, the most expensive, complex and versatile aroma compounds are used in fruit flavors. When you mix them in the right way, in a fishy flavor, they bring out a certain characteristic, and yet they don't make that fishy flavour smell of fish. That is how complex it is. I only found this out a few years ago because I identified a compound that was used in a fishy flavour that I was interested in, and that I in fact, it's a fishy savoury flavour which I actually buy, and it's also used in strawberry flavour. Can you believe that? So again, you know, it's this the best conversation you could have in order. Let me throw the ball back in your court. What in asking me that question? What are you trying to achieve? What's your goal in wanting to sort of, you found out about TMA, you know, it's an aroma compound. What brought you to that, and what did you want to achieve by using it? Exclusivity or a certain profile? Have you had success with using flavors with that product in it?
Yeah, to be honest, I cheated a little bit, and I knew that it wasn't something that you were a great believer in. So I did cheat a little bit there. But it's something that's spoken about quite a bit in, you know, between the kind of real bait nerds, bait geeks, whatever you want to call them, people that really like to look at things in depth. And it's been attributed, rightly or wrongly, quite possibly wrongly, to the success of a few flavors. And I wanted to know your opinion on it. I mean, I think that the real
you mentioned it was in. Sorry, you mentioned it was in Squid Octopus Coirera.
Allegedly, I don't know what was in the Coirera, but yeah, allegedly that was part of its success. I think as well, actually, it's important to say that Coirera was very alkaline, and a lot of people also attribute that to its success. I think there's a bit of a divide there, but yeah, it's certainly spoken about that it was abundant in the Squid and Octopus flavor by Martin Locke Solar.
Yeah, I spoke to Martin last week about it, believe it or not.
Interesting.
He was fishing. Yeah, he was fishing, and I've been chatting to him about a few things, and so I was chatting away to him, and when we finished the conversation, I was on the phone to him for a long while, and I said to him, by the way, I'm sure that I know the answer to this question, but would I be right in assuming that the reason that you couldn't get Squid Octopus Coirera anymore or sell it anymore is because it was a wholly non-compliant product and they wouldn't make it anymore because it didn't comply to EC food regulations? And he said, yeah, it's got some things in it which aren't very nice and they wouldn't make it. So that's from the horse's mouth. I spoke to him last week about it. We did discuss some of the components, but I don't really want to talk about what components we discussed today. So there's food regulation problems with using non-FEMA registered products or marginal products which are deemed to be artificial, which often won't be allowed in they aren't even allowed on the premises of some food companies, flavor companies. They won't have them on the they're not allowed to have them on the premises. They have to fill in a health and safety sheet to declare what they've got on their premises. You probably know that.
Yeah.
Whilst TMA sort of been mentioned, now this is something I looked into, like Sam was saying, so many years ago, and is there a relationship between amines like TMA and carboxylic acids? Is there a certain reaction that can take place between those that the carp, the byproduct of that chemical reaction, is particularly attractive to carp?
I don't know. I know somebody who would tell you in a heartbeat, and that's my friend Malcolm. He's an organic chemist. He would be able to tell you, but he probably wouldn't be able to tell you quite how attractive the reaction of those two compounds coming together on their own just those two on their own, would have in a bait, whether or not they would be attractive to carp. This is one of the conundrums of creating a unique product. What we're all looking for the sort of El Dorado of flavors in a way, and very often they come to you by accident. So yes, the range of complex methyl related products are interesting, and some of the sulfides, the dimethyl sulfide, some of these are interesting. The amines and sulfides linked together. You see, for example, DMPT, which is linked to sulfides. There's a lot of people banging on about DMPT, and I'm really worried about that product for a simple reason. I was given some, and I put it into an extremely high quality foil laminate bag, and I used it in a paste because you can't boil it. It's like amino acids. Waste of time to boil them. You can only use DMPT in a paste at very low levels or in a solution on the outside of a boilie. So it's not the world's best additive for bait because it will wash off anyway. Anyway, I put this stuff. This is very important, actually, a point I'm going to make. I put this DMPT into this very high quality pouch. It's the sort of pouch that you would have a top quality dog food in. Those stiff pouches that you cut the top off with a pair of scissors and give it to Fido in the morning for his breakfast with some mixers. That sort of thing. The sort of thing I mean. And I didn't use it I used it off and on, and then I didn't use it for about 5 or 6 months, and I'd kept it in the fridge inside another bag, and when I took it out to check it, the DMPT had eaten the coating on the inside of the bag. How about that? It had destroyed. It was beginning to destroy. I mean, it's a sulfurous compound, so it's I mean, it comes from algae, but I mean, it's. Why are we putting these things in our bait for fish? Don't need to. So I think some of the chemicals that we're discussing now, we're going deeply into flavor and the chemistry of bait. It's a fascinating subject, and you could do 10 podcasts on it. But what bothers me is, are we trying to catch fish at all costs?
Very, very good point. I think with DMPT, it certainly serves some sort of biological purpose within a fish. I know a lot of the koi industry now are using it as a not as an additive, but as I can't think of the correct word to use. But a lot of the Chinese suppliers and things, they brand it as a medicine almost for fish. And I know people are using it at incredibly low levels.
It's interesting because I knew, you can't know many people much better than you can know your son-in-law. And he's a qualified ichthyologist, a chap called Richard Maud. And he worked for 9 years with the biggest producers of koi food in the world, which is Hikari.
Yeah.
And he's been to their factory in Japan twice. And I think it was twice. Anyway, he's been there. He's never mentioned DMPT. And when we look at all the recipes, which by law have to be declared on the back of the bags,
absolutely,
it does not mention DMPT once. It mentions much more fish-friendly and interesting things like spirulina, hydrolyzed fish protein, seaweed meal, alfalfa meal, silkworm pupae meal, which is difficult to get in the Northern Hemisphere, but they got loads of it down in China and Japan. Plus an awful lot of vitamins and mineral compounds, riboflavin, thiamine, which I'm particularly keen on, vitamins and minerals. I think it's the Pandora's box of bait, vitamins and minerals. Because those are the things that the fish, I think, find most difficult to find naturally. So if you can find what they're deficient in on a given fishery and put it in your bait, wowza.
Difficult process to go through, isn't it?
It is, but you can often do it by knowing what other people are throwing in.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, all these guys out that are listening to this that are pretty good at bait, and there's going to be some good guys, very good. There's going to be guys in the trade. There's going to be some really, really switched on people that know ingredients, know bait, know flavours, know a lot. And they will all say the same thing, I'm quite sure. If you can roughly find out by hook or by crook what's going down on a given lake, and either use the opposite or use a bait with a profile of nutrients that are giving them the alternative food to that which they're seeing more regularly, then you should clean up, because the fish are going to be bored stiff of one diet. It's something I love doing. You know, you use something really unusual, and you know you get bites straight away very often. Mm-hmm. I'm particularly keen on B vitamins, all the B vitamins. I'm really keen on all those. I rate those very highly.
That's it. And I saw, I've forgotten which base mix you were using in your recent video, weren't you? But you were saying there's where you sell as well, like a yeast additive, don't you? Which is a blend of different yeasts, I believe.
Yeah,
is that particularly the B vitamins and yeast that you're interested in?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, autolyzed yeast from Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So I don't use Brocacell. That comes from grape skins. I don't know if you know that.
Do you know what? I think I did know that.
I
did. I've only learned that recently, but yeah.
Yeah, grape skins. It's good. It's a good product. Very good. But, you know, I think there's stuff equally as good or maybe better. And so to get the maximize the, I'm particularly interested in the taste, hence the name. But I think they absolutely love vitamin B, and it's such an essential vitamin for carp. It's so important. So you get the best of both worlds. You get a tick box ingredient. They love the smell, they love the taste, and they need the vitamins. So why wouldn't you put it in your bait?
Yeah, absolutely. I think digestive purposes as well. It ticks an awful lot of boxes.
Well, it's a gut calmer. It's included in koi food as a gut calmer. In fact, there are other ingredients that do the same thing. Some of the kelp and seaweed meals will also act as a gut calmer, and they're brilliant. Mm-hmm. Without using well, everyone knows about kelp powder anyway. So it's good for vitamins and minerals, so I won't bang on about that.
And is it so when you're designing a base mix and you're looking at a vitamin and mineral, like a profile, or how do you go about doing that? Is that something you'd look at straight away? Is it supplementary afterwards? Would you ever use a vitamin supplement, or are you looking at natural sort of content from your ingredients?
I very often use a vitamin supplement, not so much in my own bait, because I don't do sustained and long campaigns on one venue anymore. I used to. And so because I'm not doing a sustained long campaign, I don't feel that my base mix recipes that I use for my own bait require the boost of an extra vitamin and mineral compound, because it's all going to be in the ingredients naturally. But often I'm helping people design and produce a bait that they're going to use for a couple of years on one venue. They're after a particular couple of fish, be it a carp or barbel. And so therefore I will put, there's two I use. I use one called Vionate, which is a multifunctional vitamin and mineral compound used in the pet food industry. So you can give it to fish, reptiles, parrots, birds, whatever. And there's another one used to be called SA47, and it's now called SA50, and that's particularly good. And I also rate tiny quantities of selenium. I think fish struggle to get selenium in their diet. A lot of these products contain selenium, so if you've got very accurate weighing scales, then a little bit of selenium is good in a bait too. But in particular, these trace elements, if you want to know more about them, it's dead easy. All you got to do is go to a local aquarium, high-end aquarium shop, and read the vitamins, minerals, and trace elements that companies like Ishigoi and Hikari put in their koi food for different times of the year. And you're away. It's done. Great. They've done it for you.
It's a fantastic tip. I've used Selenovite a lot over the years. Until recently, and I realised it had it supplements copper as well. Now, I know sort of copper's a bit of a no-no for carp. Now, it all depends upon the level, I guess, you're feeding it. I don't know if you can sort of chime in on that argument at all.
Well, I've used Selnovite, and I stopped using it because it's whether it's the copper or not, the content in it, which I'm aware of, but the general profile of it, it's for horses. It's a horse supplement. Correct, and we've got horses in our family. My wife's got a horse and my daughter's got a couple of horses. So all those different horse supplements I'm aware of. But I think as an additive per se, because it's not designed for carp, and because it's got it's very strong, sort of, even the smell is strong and the taste is strong. Mm-hmm. Well, if you're going to use trace elements and mineral compounds, call them what you will, I don't think you should be able to detect them, even when using them in small quantities, as easily as you can smell, taste, and detect Selnovite. So I stopped using that about 13 years ago.
Wow, yeah, long time.
Yeah.
So again, for a lot of the bait makers listening, for us, it can be a nightmare if you don't have a lot of bank hours. Testing is difficult, and it's one of the reasons I've sort of stopped making or experimenting so much with bait, because I just don't have the bank hours anymore that I used to have. What sort of processes do you go through at John Maker Baits when it comes to testing? Are you talking about your flavours and these new compounds and things? What sort of processes do you go through before you take an idea when you've spoken to your chemist, or when you sort of supply it to the public or put it in your bait?
The process I would go through with something brand spanking new from an additive or compound point of view is these days minimal. Mm-hmm. Because much of the real hard groundwork I've already done. Now, that does not mean to say that I am not still learning. So there are some things that I'm looking at right now, which I believe are pivotal in bait. And how we're going to prove that is we're going to do it. You have to have people that you trust implicitly. And this is a direct reply to your question. Mm-hmm. Irrespective of whether it's a flavour, a base mix design, or some new product that crops up. And the newest one I found, which you could say is a bit groundbreaking, is a shrimp extract, which I couldn't bring into the UK 3 years ago because I don't have a DEFRA license. I used to have one. But what the listeners may not know is that 16 years ago I had throat cancer. And quite a few people do know I was ill, but I had a squamous cell cancer removed from my tonsil, and I was given 50-50 to live. And I very rarely talk about this, but it completely changed my life in the way I thought about things. And I stopped the very big not very big, sorry. I stopped the quite large and successful bait company I was running at the time with a 3,000 square foot bait unit and 3 people working for me, closed it all down, put the bait company on hold for a year and reevaluated. And then since then, I've run it as a lifestyle business. So all my licenses and ability to buy in bulk stopped quite quickly, but I kept all my friends and I kept all my accounts open. So I was still able to buy. And so quite a lot has happened in the people I trust, because people come and go. And when they think that they're not going to get anything out of you anymore, they disappear very quickly.
Funny
It's funny that. When you're useful to somebody, they're all over you. And as soon as they think you've lost your usefulness, they disappear and they suddenly pop up as a consultant for somebody else, and they take a lot of your ideas with them. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question in a roundabout way of giving a bit of history of, incidentally, I'm completely clear of cancer and have been for well over 12 years. So I was brilliantly treated in the Royal Berkshire Hospital. I had 6 weeks radiotherapy and they got it. I had an operation. Great, absolutely Good. Great. So you can tell that it was in my throat and I'm still talking okay. Well, I think I'm talking okay. As long as I hydrate with a little bit of Stella, a good old Stella. In fact, I've just had a sweet now. So the last product I brought in was a shrimp extract, and that comes all the way from the Far East. And I couldn't bring it in because the minimum order was a ton. And so I contacted a friend of mine in the trade, not the bait trade, an ingredient company. And I said, can you bring it in for me? And they said, well, if we're going to bring it in, we might as well bring in 3 tons. And so they brought in 3 tons on their DEFRA license, which was great. And I'd already had a 30 kilo sample sent to me, which was very interesting to get a 30 kilo sample, which came back and forwards twice from Singapore before it eventually came through the UK customs. So I don't know how many miles it had done, about 20,000 miles before I eventually got it. Anyway, I gave it to 6 people I trusted who I knew wouldn't say anything to anybody and would just use it at the right level in their bait, then come back to me and tell me whether it was effective or not. And finding people you trust who aren't going to steal your ideas, who aren't going to go off and say one thing and do something else is not easy. And so getting that information and finding things out that are really true, and you tell people to put 1 mil of this in and 2 mil of that, 5 mil of this, or and then you know it transpires. Oh well, I didn't have any large eggs, so I used medium eggs, and I didn't have this, so I used that. And you know, so you really do have to have people that you trust, and trust seems to be a very difficult thing to get in anglers, because they're constantly wanting to change what they're doing. They're very hopping from one idea to another every 5 minutes, instead of sticking it out and giving something a really good try. So
yeah, well, they want to catch and get the best out of it as well. So by nature, we're tinkerers, aren't we? How many people do you have? Sort of, is it a handful? Are we talking sort of like 5-10 people who you trust implicitly, or is it less than that?
I have people that I trust implicitly. I have about 10. None of them. I've never had, not since those days when I had the big unit.
Yeah.
I don't have any field testers, haven't done for 15 years. Don't have any team members. Won't ever do that. I'll tell you why. 2 of my team members are well-known names. Really well-known names. They're still very well-known now. They both broke records in different species, barbel, chub, carp, all sorts. And they had bait from me at cost. Okay, this is why I'm still smarting. So they had bait from me at cost, not at trade, at cost. I subsequently found out that both of them were selling it.
Yeah.
So that is a really good example of what I'm talking about. So I've got a wonderful group of people up and down the country. On the barbel side, people fishing on the River Trent, people fishing on the Dove, the Severn, the Warwickshire Avon, the Wye, the Hampshire Avon. In particular, I've got some real good pals fishing the Hampshire Avon. A couple of guys that have been in my syndicate, so I trust them. And they're old. Most of them are older guys. They're steady. They've been there. They've done it. They don't want the publicity, and they're happy to test things out. So I get them to test my flavour blends, and I give them a couple of bottles of flavour and say, try some different. I'll leave it to you. Try some different combinations and tell me what you think. And on the carp side, the best thing I've got on that, which is obviously the bulk of my activity, is feedback. And when you've been involved in bait for as long as I have, people tell you, you don't have to ask them, they tell you how they're going to get on, and they will tell you that they've done better this way or that way. They've done better using this profile in that bait. So you almost don't need a field tester. You get the feedback firsthand from people because they send you the pictures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
this is what I call, so it's they're trusting me and I'm trusting them. And I never ask for publicity. Again, I used to say this in my brochures. I've got it printed from even 15, 16 years ago. I actually say in my brochures, I won't ask for publicity if you don't want it. How many bait companies do that?
This is, very true. Very true. Mind you, everyone wants to be a field tester these days, don't they?
Oh, so, I get the emails. Yeah.
You've got to have balls to do it, haven't you?
Yeah,
I just couldn't think of anything worse to email a company and say, look, this is what I'm catching. Probably not on your product, but do you want me on board?
It's great, though, because people are keen and enthusiastic, and I love that enthusiasm. It's brilliant. And so you can't just write people off when they ask you things. You have to be as kind as you can and help them. I'm very lucky. I've got a fantastic network of people I trust, and so that would be my watchword. The thing is that it does take quite a while to bring things out, and I mean, if you look at how worried people are by a name, then you only have to look at how many crab flavours there are, how many Scopexes there are. They're all they can't all be any good. And there must be 100 Scopexes in Europe. And there must be 100 different crab flavours. And 200 different strawberry flavours. And 200 different cream flavours. And, everyone uses the same name. We do a Scopex. Yeah, I bet you do. It's can't people come up with their own ideas? That's what I'm saying, their own names, because it isn't the name, it's what's in it.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes down to sales, doesn't it, at the end of the day? And it's what an entire generation of carp anglers are sort of conditioned to. So, I mean, we've gone back onto flavours again, haven't we?
We have. It does happen that way.
It is your area of extreme expertise. Flavours of old and modern day flavours. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. Where are the big differences? There's a common theme when you're on the forums and you talk to people that such and such a flavour isn't a touch on what it used to be, and a lot of it's down to these European sort of laws where some, for example, the solar squid and octopus, it's not the same flavour anymore. They've had to change it. I know it's under different management and things now. What do you think is sort of like the big difference between flavours then and flavours now?
That's an easy one. There's only a few flavours that are made in exactly the same way that still exist today that are conforming flavours that conform to regs. and so there, and also the companies that made them, because companies over many years get bought and sold. There's only a very few left now in 2021 in the same premises or in the same county with certainly they won't have the same staff, and they won't have the same flavorists, and they won't have the same recipes. And that is because they have had to remap everything so it's compliant. So the chances of you buying a flavor today that is identical to that which was around in the 70s and 80s, for two reasons, is unlikely. Mm-hmm. Reason number one is that well, I've got to be careful what I say here. A number of companies in the 70s and 80s bought flavors that were called bin ends. So they would go to a flavor company and say, we've got a fishing business, because they say, what type of business? What's it for? What do you want the flavor for? And you wouldn't say, oh, I'm in the bakery trade, or I'm making boiled sweets or chocolate or yogurts or whatever it is. You'd say, oh, fish bait. So straight away, that's music to their ears. So they say, oh, what type of flavor are you after? So, I'm after a creamy one, and I'm after a really good fruity flavor, a bit like, a strawberry flavor or a blackcurrant flavor or this or that. And have you got any coconut flavor? And have you got any this or that? And you ring round all the companies, and you find that they've made some flavors for someone else, and those other people have stopped buying it, and they've got excess stock. And I know for a fact that a number of extremely well-known people bought flavors that way. And then suddenly they couldn't sell them anymore. And they couldn't sell them anymore because they'd run out. And they'd run out for two reasons. Number one, they'd run out. They didn't have any. And number two, the company couldn't make them anymore because they'd been sold, or the flavor didn't comply. So I knew this was going on, and I never said anything, and I still won't say anything about who those companies were. But the only way that I could, being a control freak, as previously mentioned, could guarantee that I could get something again was to go to the next level and buy the most expensive, compliant, conforming flavor that I could get and reblend it with something else so it could never be copied. And that's what I've done ever since. So there's a massive difference. Furthermore, once you say that you're a fishing bait company, nearly every flavor you buy is diluted. And that applies today. So nearly every flavor, this is very controversial, but I'm going to say it because it's true. Nearly every flavor that's sold by a bait company as a flavor, or sold by a flavor manufacturer, is diluted much more than it would normally be if it was sold to the food trade. And it's diluted by bait companies because they make a lot more money out of selling a flavor to gullible carp anglers. And that's true. I'm not mentioning any single supplier of bait flavors. I'm just telling you that is what goes on, and I know it goes on. It's very tempting to buy 50 kilos of flavour that's cost you £40 a kilo, and there aren't many bait companies that will spend £40 a kilo on a flavour, I can tell you that. And then it's strong, and you think, well, I only need 1 mil of that in a kilo. So what I'll do is I'll cut it by 50%. And you've got to put 2 mil in. Well, you look at most bait companies' flavours. For 6 eggs, it needs 5 mil. Mm-hmm. What does that tell you?
Well, yeah, it's been cut.
It's controversial. It's controversial, but it's obvious.
Yeah.
And I can stand up and put my hand in the air and say, the facts speak for themselves. There's plenty of good ingredients out there. There's plenty of really good things sold, and I'm not knocking it, and I'm very careful to say this on my YouTube clips. It's all fine. It's absolutely fine. It won't hurt the fish. It's absolutely fine. But it's when you're in business and doing it for a living, and you've got, you've left your job and you've decided to set up a bait business, and you want to earn money from it and pay your mortgage and put petrol in your car and go to the supermarket, put food on the table. It's very tempting to cut corners. And because the bait industry is deregulated, there's no regulations with it at all. So you can say what you want, you can sell what you want, and you can almost do what you want in England.
Yeah.
But you can't do that in Europe anymore. You have to declare all the ingredients.
That's it. And obviously, I know Brexit, I'm sure, would have affected you in some way or another, as it has the entire sort of UK bait industry at the moment. But something I was going to put to you on this, and by all means, you may want to answer it, you may not. For example, somebody wanted a certain flavour and you weren't able to do it for them, or you don't do it. Is there another sort of flavourist or company who you would recommend for carp anglers who are sort of like look after their quality as much as you do?
No.
I think
that's a political answer, isn't it?
That is a political answer, but we can we don't need to expand. We can leave it there. We got the answer.
Well, when politicians come on the television and they get asked what they think about the French contemplating withholding delivery of AstraZeneca vaccines back to England because they feel hard done by because they couldn't authorise its use in France because of their bureaucracy, etc., etc. And you think to yourself, oh, bloody hell, people are very frustrating and annoying when you have these political answers, and so you get asked the question. The health minister comes on and gets asked the question, and they never answer it. You could have Jeremy Paxman or whoever it is, Laura Kunsberg, I think, is a very good interviewer. She asks some pretty probing questions. And the politicians get asked, well, what do you think about the French? And they say, well, our friends in France, they've had a few meetings and they're lovely people and we like their cheese and wine. And I'm sure they'll be very nice to us and let us have our AstraZeneca vaccine. You've asked me a direct question. Is there any company I would supply? Well, there's two reasons why I can't ask you that. First of all, I'll say no. And I'll say no because I'm not going to give away my secrets, thanks. And I don't know enough about the trouble that other companies go to, bait companies go to, specifically in that question with flavours, in order to say to you, you can really trust this or that company, so go to them. Because I don't know really what they do. Once they shut their doors, I've no idea what they do. So I can't. I can speak about a few artisan bait rolling companies who I really rate quite highly. There's a few really good guys out there who know what they're doing and produce some really nice stuff. But as far as flavors, it's almost like a dark art because people don't know anything about it, so they will believe what they're told.
Yeah, very true.
It's a bit of a showstopper. I'm sorry, but it is the truth.
No, that's it. It's not controversial, and we've got a very strong answer. And I completely respect you and appreciate the response. Sam, have you got anything to add to that, to the flavour?
Yeah, well, I've been biting my lip over here and letting you two chat away. I've got to just tie up a few loose ends, otherwise people will be screaming at us right now. The DMPT thing, I understand your concern on that. It's not actually meant for feed, certainly within the EU. Where we sit within the EU regs right now, I don't know. But it's not meant to be a feed stuff. And I thought it was worth saying that because I know people will be screaming at us right now.
Yeah, it's an additive. It's an additive. It's a taste feed stimulant additive, isn't it?
Only meant for lures, so meaning hook baits rather than actual bait that will be eaten, consumed by an animal. But yeah, absolutely. Similar thing with the copper, actually. Shockingly, you'll find copper added in some koi feeds, which is absolutely crazy, but you will find it. In fact, I was in the garden centre the other day and I was looking at the feeds, the different feeds, and it was listed in 2 different products by 2 different companies. So make of that what you will, but just kind of shifting gears a little bit and getting back into the technicalities of bait and attraction, etc. Essential oils. I've noticed that you've just released, or you're soon to release, a couple of essential oils. Now we've spoken about this, quite a lot on this podcast. Many people will know that I'm doing my own trials on essential oils on my pond fish, tank fish. What's brought about the release of these essential oils? Where do you see them fitting into a bait? What are their uses? How are they different from flavors? Can you kind of give your stance on that?
Yes, good question. Thank you. So about 5 years ago, and this is a good example of using people to test bait, I was offered a blend of oleo resins and essential oils in one particular form, which is like a Cajun flavor. So it had cayenne and paprika, onion oil, which I rate very highly.
Yeah.
A tiny amount of onion oil. Got a little bit of garlic, not too much. You can overdo garlic. And just a profile of a sort of, Bayou Caribbean reggae style type of, quite hot jambalaya type flavor. Really, really good. And we just used to call it the red hot flavor. And we started to use it in conjunction with a couple of oil-based flavors. And we sold it exclusively, me and a friend of mine that distributes bait in France. He doesn't do it any longer. And it went really well. And people were catching fish wholesale on it. So it was, it was brand new. And we tested it with a few. He did have a team of people in France. We tested it. And I gave it to a few anglers in the UK and just said, look, try it. And it came back quite positively. So amazingly complex. So, it's a sort of the full recipe. It comes from a cooking sauce recipe, which I asked to be made in quadruple strength. And then I add extra essential oils to it. So, I said I purchase things and then change them. So it came from a food company, which I then alter them again when they come through my doors. Usually making them much stronger and more complex. I never dilute anything that comes through my doors, I might add. So we tried this Cajun spice thing and it worked really well. And then at the same time, I sort of spoke to them about using a mixture of fenugreek, which got trendy when used on its own. It's sold by a few companies on its own. And there's a company in Holland that do it called Feed Stimulants, and they do all sorts of weird stuff, DMPT and piperine, which I think is horrible. That's a horrible ingredient, piperine. Probably one of the worst ingredients I've ever tasted. It's the pungent part of black pepper oil, sold separately.
It's a bioactivator though as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but what a horrible ingredient. I don't like it at all. Anyway, so it's not a Carp ingredient to me.
Okay.
Anyway, so we went round full circle, and I got this masala blend, or a tikka blend, made with a particularly expensive essential oil, which is essential oil of cardamom. And that's one of the most expensive essential oils you can get. So cardamom, black pepper, cumin, coriander, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of clove. So that's would be a sort of next level of authentic Indian spice oil, including, fenugreek oleo resin and pure essential oils, all made up as an emulsion. So it's perfectly miscible in an oil. So I thought, well, if it's miscible in an oil, I'll put it with my roast chicken flavor. And of course, what am I going to call it? Chicken tikka. Well, my God, it took places apart. So you've got 7 essential oils and about 3 oleo resins all together in one flavor with another flavor, which is complex. which is roast chicken, which is made by the same company that makes Ala Salar. So it's really tastes like proper roast chicken on its own. It's brilliant on its own. Mix them together and you've got something off the wall in complexity. So we've used that for, I've sold that flavour for 3 years. So the natural process of bringing out these two essential oil and oleoresin blends on their own so that other people can play about with them and use them. I just thought, well, it's never really been done before, so I'll bring them out. And they were out last Friday.
See, oleoresins, I mean, you mentioned fenugreek and I mean, the better quality oleoresins that I've got, they are extremely thick. You know, they're like treacle. So I'm guessing you're using those in very small quantities within that emulsification of oils, etc.
Yeah, they're emulsified down in a laboratory for me. I don't do that myself. They're made in the emulsion for me, so it comes to me as an emulsion, a blended emulsion, and then I add extra essential oils to it.
Yeah. And are you adding the oleoresins as a gustatory counterpart within the whole package, or something else? Do you match up the taste and the smell between different flavors?
Yeah, taste. I'm particularly keen on the taste and the smell, both. I think they're equally important.
I mean, I
think the taste is vital, really.
Yeah. Do you kind of, I mean, prioritize is the wrong word, because obviously you want both to be doing as good as it can do, but do you tend to swing it in the favor of perhaps taste or smell, or do you favor one or the other? Do you prioritize one?
I think I would prioritize taste. But I would take the taste from the base mix and then harmonize the base mix with a low level of flavor so that you get the benefit of both harmonized together. What I don't understand, I do understand it because it's understandable and because it's normal behavior, which I've done and which we all do, and that is to use a fairly simple base mix and put a flavor with it, or a blend of flavors, or a combination of essential oils and flavors and extracts, but it has an overarching smell to it. Let's pick a common one which has been, banded around for 10 years, pineapple and butyric. People say, I just use pineapple and butyric, sometimes with black pepper as well, and I just use it in a 50-50 mix. I just don't get that. Well, I don't get it for me. I get it why they're doing it, because it's just a carrier. It's just a carrier for the flavor. So it's just the flavor that's catchy, that is effectively attracting the fish, and then they're sucking the bait in their mouth and they're getting caught because of the hair rig.
Yeah, it's going to blow.
There's a great test that you can do, and the great test, this would be the ultimate test of a bait for anybody at all who ever listens to these words. The ultimate test for a bait is this: you make a really good base mix from any ingredients you fancy, and my God, there's enough of them out there on the internet. You choose a profile of protein, carbohydrate, fats, all minerals, vitamins, all those things, the 5 essential nutrients that carp need, and you use it with no flavor or additive whatsoever, just that on its own, and you go to a lake which is well stocked, like a pay lake, a day ticket lake, something like that, and you go fishing with no hair rig. How many people do that? And you float fish, or you ledger, or you do whatever you're going to do, and you see how many bites you get and how many fish you hook. That is the mega test for a base mix, because the more they like it, the more they'll give you a bite. And before the hair rig was invented, if you didn't use a paste, and obviously before the hair rig was invented, we did use boilies, and you got much better bites when you use proper tasting baits that weren't too overpowering. And that sounds so obvious and so simple, but it's true. So if you start and finish on the base mix, and once you've got that right, then you just keep adding a tiny, tiny little bit of complementary flavour. This is what I do until you get the profile exactly right. And if you want a quick hit, put a bit more flavour in. If you want a long-lasting bait, put less in. And it's as simple as that. And you try fishing when you're talking about float fishing and using a paste. If you bury the hook inside that paste, they've got to want it for you to get a decent bite and hook the fish.
Yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. I mean, 10 years ago, me and Pete we were at a stage where we wouldn't have dreamt of using a flavour. We were solely relying upon the base mix ingredients and liquid additives as well. So yeah, I understand what you mean, and we've come kind of full circle with that. Just backtrack slightly in terms of the receptors of carp and what they pick up. Say if you were using, just for argument's sake, the cinnamon essential oil, cinnamon bark essential oil, would you, and perhaps you wouldn't use that essential oil, just as an example, would you then back that up with the powdered version of it, so powdered cinnamon? So
Yes.
You've got two different aspects.
Yeah, I use a mixed spice, a 5-spice mixed spice in my buttermilk. I put that in there in a tiny amount. It's only just there. You can just about taste it, and it's just there as a back note, as an enhancer, because I stopped using powdered enhancers years ago. These they're called palatants, taste enhancers, all that sort of thing. I stopped using all them years. I used to sell them. I stopped using them because I think they catch carp anglers more than they catch carp, because all they really are liquid flavours made into a powder with a sweetening agent added. So if you put a palatant in, you're putting more flavour in the bait. So I rate cinnamon highly, either cinnamon leaf or cinnamon bark. I rate them highly.
In terms of powder,
I don't rate nutmeg. Both, but I think they're both great. I think the essential oil's probably got the edge because it's just a bit stronger. But certainly I rate that. Any of the bun spices. In fact, the next flavour I'm working on is one I used to sell called Bun Spice Perfume in dropper bottles.
Yeah.
About
essential oils.
Can't remember. Yeah, it was all pure essential oils.
Yeah.
And I'm making a new one, which is like a mulled wine bun spice. It's like a Christmas bun spice with.
Wow.
I'm doing one that's coming out in the autumn. I'm just sourcing the essential oils now because I've been buying black pepper and cardamom and a few other expensive oils, and everyone's asking me to bring back a bun spice, which I have done before, and it's about the one thing that's missing in my armory at the moment, my flavour armory. So I'm enjoying that project. I think I'm going to put a little tiny twist of something Christmassy in it as well, to give it a bit of a zing. So that's it's going to be not going to be a pure bun spice. It will be a bun spice with an edge. So I'm just working out what I'm going to use in there. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it will be. Yeah, it's all good fun, isn't it? And it works, of course. I can tell you a quick story about cinnamon. A pal of mine back in the late 70s bought 2 5-litre drums of cinnamon oil at great expense to share them with his friends. He wasn't in the bait business. He just bought them. He's quite a well-known guy, actually, in East London. And he was very excited. He went to collect these from a company in London. And he drove from the company with these 2 big drums 5-litre glass jars they were, because essential oils store best in glass. And off he went to his local lake, and to see his mate who was fishing, and he parked the car in a car park and walked around the lake and had a cup of tea with his mate. And he said, I've got the cinnamon oil. And bearing in mind, this is about 1979, 78, 79. Anyway, they had their cup of tea, and he said, I'll take it home, and I've got some glass bottles. I'll dispense it all out and give it to all the lads. When he got back to his car had been broken into, and both of the bottles of essential oil had been stolen.
That was the most valuable thing there, was it?
Well, I don't know what else he had in the car, he said, but they didn't take anything else. He said they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing. Yeah.
I said, didn't you cover it up or something? And I can't remember what he said now. It was a long time ago. But yeah, every time I think of essential oils, I think of that story. And that was actually an essential oil used by Fred Wilton, the great Fred Wilton. He used cinnamon. It's a definite winner. It's a good oil.
Yeah, definitely a bugbear, because I've looked into cinnamon a lot and I've used it for years. I mean, cinnamon leaf essential oil and cinnamon bark essential oil, and then you've got cassia in there, which isn't a true cinnamon, but it's there nonetheless. There's a big difference between them, in terms of what they, the actual compounds within them. Eugenol is obviously much more prevalent within the leaf. Do you have a preference of one? Is there a sort of history that you have tied to a certain type of cinnamon essential oil or anything like that?
Well, I'm a massive fan of isoeugenol. There are 7 different types of isoeugenol.
Yeah.
I caught my first 30 using isoeugenol in 1981.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's in my diary. Save Canal Bank. And we tested it when I did the tank test in Carp fever, and we tested isoeugenol in 1980. That is completely true.
Magic.
Yeah. So I rate isoeugenol in a major way. It appears in many, many flavors. It's one of the top 10 ingredients, but it's much, much better when it's used with something else. So I blend it with a dairy cream flavor, and that's my butt ringer. So my butt ringer flavor is exactly the flavor I caught my first 30 on, which is a measured amount of isoeugenol, which you've got to really fiddle about with because it comes in a solid block, and you have to heat it up in a bath, in a warm bath, get it to room temperature so it becomes liquid, and then you have to dissolve it onto the flavor. So I've been doing that exact tactic, an exact piece of housekeeping since 1981. To make that flavour. And
that caught you first 30. That's lovely, isn't it? There's a little bit of
bit
of sentiment in that. I like that. Yeah.
That caught me my first 30, and we made the bait on June the 15th, and we'd never used it before.
And you caught it
and
on
we
the 16th.
Used it. I caught it on the 16th, and I used it at Save, experimenting on one of the best lakes in the country, having never used it before, and caught the bloody fish. I caught 5 out of Save, and I only ever did 14 trips.
Jeez.
There were people fishing at Save in that time, in 81, 82, giving up work and doing their whole rota every week.
Yeah.
And claiming the dole.
Yeah.
That's what made me leave the syndicate, actually, because I thought, this isn't carp fishing. Save had such a big effect on people that it changed their lives.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, absolutely. And that's the whole podcast in itself, isn't it, Save? But that butt ringer that you have to this day is exactly the same as it was back then, is it?
Exactly the same.
Wow.
Yeah. It's the old original. I have to change it slightly. But because I know the components that go in it. It's the old original dairy cream flavour, which I sell, which is what Kevin Maddox, myself, Lenny Middleton, Jeff Kemp, we all used it. Jeff used to sell it. So we knew it worked. So we knew the dairy cream flavour worked on its own. And because it's an MPG-based flavour, you know, I'm giving away a lot of information here, but basically it will carry isoeugenol. So you can blend it on it. I've given away a lot of information there, actually, but you can. I mean, look, hey, I've had the best of it since 1981. So, you know, other people can share in that information.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm sure you've sold a
few
bottles
that's
of
true.
I'm sure you sold a few bottles of Buttringer there. For sure. That's lovely.
I've sold one or two, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, off the back of what you were just saying, I'm the most sentimental person you'll ever meet. I mean, it's sickly, but yeah, I think that's lovely that you caught your first 30 at Save of all places on June the 16th with that flavour. That's just, it's kind of meant to be, isn't it? Yeah, it's lovely.
It was lovely, and in actual fact, it gets even more bonkers than that, because I actually was using a product developed by ICI, which subsequently cost them so much money that they didn't carry on with the development of it. And it was a super protein grown on oil called Protein.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I bought, for my book, I've bought the photograph of the Protein plant. It looks like a part of a petrochemical plant. It's huge. It's about, I don't know, God knows, it's about 20 meters high. It looks like something from Doctor Who. It's all pipes coming out of it, and, you know, pressure vessels and wires and God knows what. And it's the plant that made protein. It made that protein.
Yeah, it's from bacteria, right?
Yeah, it's a bacteria. I think it was grown on some sort of oil substrate. I don't know exactly how they made it. I've got all the notes on it, but I can't remember them now, because it's in the dusty archives of when I ever get around to doing my book, which I'm about 30,000 words into it at the moment. So I've got another 50,000 to write.
I reckon you got that in you, yeah, and I think you definitely should. Okay, it's interesting. Are you able to tell us which isoeugenol you use within, or which one you'd favour?
Do you think I should?
Yes. I would say that though, wouldn't I?
I would have to go outside and read the code, the FEMA code off the drum.
Yeah.
But it is the standard flavorist version, which is the most common one, which is sold and used by flavour companies. And I get it from a huge aroma chemical company that don't make flavours. They just sell aroma chemicals, nothing else. And you can find it in about 5 minutes on the internet. And it's on there. So it's
standard stuff.
It's the standard stuff. Yeah. It's nothing special.
Yeah. Perfect. I want to be respectful of your time. I've got a couple more questions if you're okay for the moment.
Yes, I am. I'm absolutely fine. The time is going so quick. It's 10 o'clock. If you and everyone who subsequently listens to this are enjoying it, I am too.
Oh, they're loving it. Trust me.
This is my passion, and I'm I suppose you could say, Frank Warwick shared a lot of good information, and he's a good pal of mine. He's in his 60s now. I've got a lot of time for Frank. He's he's a world-renowned obsessive carp angler by his own admission, and he's sharing a lot of stuff, and I don't mind sharing some stuff too. So, you know, why not?
We very much appreciate it, and I know our listeners do as well, and I really mean that as well. Earlier on, we spoke about different components within flavors, different compounds, different things in flavors that make them work, esters, lactones, etc. Are you able to go into the science of what the carp can actually detect within different flavors, and what really switches them on, and how we would best choose a flavor to perhaps target the older, more special carp, older, bigger. I know those two things aren't always the same, but what's the science behind these esters and lactones, etc.?
Well, I think the science behind them is the understanding of how we're able to mimic that which appears in nature. So a combination of a naturally based aroma compound, of which there are hundreds, together with a nature identified flavor compound, of which there are hundreds, comes together in a profile which appears to work. And I can answer that question quite simply. If you pick some foodstuffs, let's look at the most popular flavors. Let's look at the fruit flavors. It's not difficult to understand, in a way, why these fruit flavors are successful. It's because they've had more development work done on them by clever people, chemists, than any other flavor. Take strawberry flavor, which has got actually identifiably over 200 individual components, and probably closer to 300 total identified aroma characteristic components that could potentially be made that go into it. But there are only really about 35 which really matter. And those same aroma compounds, which would be made up from aldehydes, ketones, lactones, esters, all the list that you can go through, which will be available on the internet, on Wikipedia. You can look it all up. It's all there. Or if you buy a book on flavors, which you can pick up on eBay. And the common denominators of those flavors and good ones, good ingredients that have had all the work done on them, will keep cropping up in other flavors as well. So some of the flavors that are in plum are also present in strawberry. And so the soft fruit range of lactones in particular, and decalactones, crop up in the same flavors. And so once you've found one or two, 3 or 4 of these, they come into groupings and they bring different characteristics. For example, linalool is one that will crop up quite regularly. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting compound, but it only goes in a tiny amount. And some of the flavor characteristics, and eugenol, that goes into banana flavor. So that goes into my banana flavor. It's quite a high dose rate. I'd have to sort of get it one day. I'll actually publish some of these recipes when I'm on my Zimmer frame. But so yeah. I'll go, oh, all right then, you can have them if you want. I'll tell you what's in plum. So
we'll be queued up.
Sorry, that's me being childish.
I trust you.
Yeah. It's I think if you can just be lucky enough to find a heat stable flavor which you can use, ideally it's got to come from the confectionery industry as opposed to the food industry. This is if it's a fruit flavor, because it will be heat stable. So it will be made with ingredients that are made and designed and put together in combination to withstand the cooking process. You imagine if you're Trebor or Cadbury Schweppes or Rowan Trees or any of the massive, great big Nestle's would be a good example. They're huge. You're making Haribos, the Haribo sweets. So you've got 10 different flavors, and they're called in the old days they used to be called stoved candies and hard gums. Mm-hmm. So they're mixed with sugar, Now, that is how a flavorist will taste and get the profile right of a flavor. They'll make a sugar solution and they'll keep adding and taking away elements of a flavor and tasting it in solution until they get the taste right. But it's a bit like when you eat a bowl of strawberries. So we're getting into the nitty-gritty of it now. When you eat a bowl of strawberries as a human being, you eat them without sugar on and they taste great. And you can taste the natural fructose, which is the strawberry fructose, and all the aroma components that are in the strawberry. And the better quality the strawberry and the longer it's been on the vine, the better. It undergoes a weird change when you add sugar. It also undergoes a weird change when you bring it up to room temperature or when you leave it until it's just going off, and they taste better. Which I mentioned this before about, fruits that come into season to be eaten by birds when they go through some sort of strange metamorphosis. I was in Africa once and on safari. I went a couple of times, and there's a tree called a marula tree producing these marula fruits, and the elephants love them. And we had elephants coming into our camp. We were sleeping in tents, and we had them coming into our camp, eating the marula trees, marula fruits, picking them up individually. They're about as big as a
peach,
a walnut. Yeah, peach, maybe a bit, that sort of size. So you obviously know the marula fruit, and but they come just at the right time, like the monkeys eat the figs when they're all ripening. And I think all that can be copied. That's all been copied. The flavour companies have got that off to a T. And then you put sugar. So that then gives the link of why some sweeteners are useful in bait, because it brings out the taste of the flavour. I actually don't rate sugars in bait. I don't rate sweeteners much. The main sweetener I use, even though I sell one, a liquid creamy sweetener, the main sweetener I use in my own bait and have done for 30 years is honey. You can't get anything more complex than honey.
What is it?
Because it's made with nectar.
Yeah, it's fairly high in fructose, obviously a monosaccharide, which is supposedly attractive to carp. What is it about honey that you like?
Oh, the taste. The taste, the smell. I mean, I'm using Manuka honey for the last 5 years.
Wow. Which
comes in different strengths.
Massively.
And it's mega. I mean, they put it on open wounds. So it's got healing properties, Manuka honey. Yeah. I rate it really highly as a bait additive. I'd be happy to use it on its own. You can't imagine the complexity of honey in a bait. It streaks ahead of thaumatin, which I think is useless. And, most of the bait sweeteners, including my own, it's just a sweetener. It doesn't do anything really. It's just a sweetener because people want a sweetener. I'm not exactly enthralled about it, but people buy it because they want it. But I say to them, you're much better off buying 50 ml bottle of my liquid creamy sweetener. Just go to Holland and Barrett and buy a jar of Manuka honey.
I'm with you.
Does that surprise you?
Does
that surprise you?
Do you know what? It surprises me that you've said that. Yeah, because I just didn't expect it. But no, I've been using, Pete knows about this, and it might be something that we'll release at some point in the future. But no, I've been using Manuka honey in this cured hook bait isn't the right word, but it's this built up hook bait. But yeah, Manuka honey is definitely something that I rate very highly. It goes beyond just the fructose, the monosaccharide element of it. In your mind, because people don't really care what I have to say about it, but in your mind, what is so special about Manuka honey?
What is so special? Its complexity, its taste, and its origin. Its chemical makeup is honey. So chemically, it's broadly the same as every other honey. But a lot of other honey is adulterated. A lot of it is diluted. it's blended. Acacia honey is good. That's got an unusual profile. Heather honey is good. And I'm currently looking at another honey, which I've just ordered, which is even more weird. It comes from a certain type of tree. And I'm looking at that one now as well. I'm not going to say what that is at the moment because I haven't really used it in fish bait, but I'm sure it's going to be very exciting. Currently, I'm halfway through it because I'm eating it on toast. It's delicious.
Yeah.
But when I heard that they were using Manuka honey on open wounds in English hospitals as a healing agent,
Wow.
I began to look at what was in it as well. And, you know, I've got some papers on it and all the rest of it. So, you know, God knows why it might be of appeal to carp. But if anyone that's read, it's a bit boring as a book, but anyone that's read The Complete Angler or any other books from the 17th century, they used honey to make a type of uncooked boilies. They used clarified butter, honey, and ground up dried meat and bean flour, and they put it together as like and cured it in near the fire to make pellets. So they were actually making pellets using honey and clarified butter, which are both preservatives. You can preserve food in both of those. One's a fat and the other's honey, so you can preserve anything in honey for years. And they were using that in the 17th century, in the 1670s. They were using that. So if it's good, if it's good enough for Isaac Walton, it's good enough for me. And the Indians have been using cumin, asafoetida, and some of these Indian spices in marcia baits for years in their raggi paste. So for centuries, these products, naturally occurring products, have been used. So why shouldn't we use them in fish bait?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting. It's really nice to see you say that, because I've been experimenting with some tree honeys. Let's just say, I mean, there's various ones, so we're not pinning down what you're using. There's pine fir, Zambian, the list goes on. There's a few different honeys, but what is it that's actually active within that honey that's doing the goods for you?
I haven't had it analysed yet. We've got a few things we want to analyse, which will be probably fodder for the book or info for the book, which I'm touring with calling "What Did You Catch That On?" That's the title of the book. So that's what everybody says. What did you catch that on? So the answer to your question is, it's just a job that I haven't done yet.
Yeah.
As far as what do I think it brings, what does it bring with it? Well, when I was a little boy, my dad, who was a polymath, for those that don't know what a polymath is, it's somebody who's multi-talented. And he was a brilliant carpenter. He was absolutely self-taught, incredible on the stock market. He left school at 15. He studied gemology. He went to be a sergeant instructor training the SAS. He kept 400 chickens, sold the eggs, and had a nursery all the time whilst he was a policeman. Can you believe that? He was always working. And in amongst all that, we had 9 hives of bees. And we extracted our own honey from as long as I can remember when I was a little boy. And we used to put the hives in different places in North London. I come from North London. One of the places we put the hive was on a railway embankment in Palmer's Green in North London. We had access to a railway embankment. And the honey that we took off from those 2 hives, from that railway embankment, was from an area of grass that had never seen any chemicals, was full of wild flowers, and was untouched. and the honey was unbelievably delicious. It was floral. It must have had naturally occurring esters. It must have had all sorts of naturally occurring flavor compounds in it. So it was a flavor in its own right. And I can remember that as a little boy. We actually used to eat the wax, swallow it as well. We used to eat the whole lot. It was fantastic. And I suppose that early childhood memory of how good honey is as a bait additive has got me on using that, over the last 20 odd years. And particularly when Manuka honey was used on one of my relatives' legs. They were in their 90s and they had ulcerated legs, really bad. When your skin gets thin when you're older, and you often get nasty skin conditions. And the hospital used these dressings, and I said, "Oh, what's in these dressings?" And they said, "Well, one of the things that's in them is a special honey called Manuka honey." How about that?
Is there a particular grade or type that you go for?
Yeah, there's one. I think it's the 50 one, 50 or 60. It's quite expensive. It's about £30 a jar.
Yeah, very expensive.
Isn't this a massive subject? The whole thing, the whole bait thing. That it's never ending.
It's huge, isn't it? And there's so many rabbit holes, and it's amazing talking to other people about it, because I mean, obviously you're many levels above us, but we'll talk to people, doing it like us, and they'll perhaps have gone down a certain rabbit hole and got so far down there, and they compare it with the rabbit hole you've gone down with, and you bring it all together. It's literally never ending. And it's so fascinating. And I think we touched upon it earlier. It's a different hobby. It's a separate hobby from fishing. It's kind of loosely tied to catching more fish, but it takes over it. It takes over that, and it gets its own momentum. And it's just something that it's a thirst you can never quench, I think.
Yes. And there's one, I agree with what you've said. It is a thirst. Well, you're either into it or you're not.
Yeah.
But there is one thing I'd like to mention to people that are testing products, testing their own ideas. And when you're behind your rods, I mean, we've all got, families and lives to lead. You can't spend an indefinite amount of time behind the rods if you're a normal human being. Anyway, that's what I think. There is a limit to the time you can spend fishing. It is only fishing. It's supposed to be a hobby. If you are going to test something out, there is only one way. You have to use exactly the same recipe on all rods at all times. If you don't, you get in such a mess, because you put one bait on one bait on another, and then you get a bite on that one, and then you change that bait and then cast it over there, and then you think, if I've got any free offerings there, and put them there. If you've got the same free offerings and the same hook baits, maybe the hook baits have got different levels of flavour in, that's fine, and you're trying them out and you've got a careful note of what they are. But the worst thing of all, take it from me, if you're testing, because I did it at Savay and it cost me fish jumping over my bait, and I couldn't get bites because I was using 3 different baits at the same time. What an idiot I was. So to all you guys out there that are testing, just try one recipe at a time. That would be my sort of passing final shot for this podcast. I think we've possibly covered just about. I don't know how long are these podcasts normally.
It varies. I mean, the ones with Dean went over 4 hours. We'd never have asked that of you, but they vary. Our podcasts are always a lot longer than the others out there, because we kind of tend to get into the technicalities of it all. So yeah, they do go on for a while, to be honest.
Okay. Is there any more questions you want to ask? Because I'm up for another 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll probably call it a day.
Yeah, that's very kind of you, John. I've got one for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
If you were to target a water, and perhaps, you know, there was some older fish within the water. I mean, do you change your bait for the given water? Let's take me for an example. I'm fishing very, very weedy gravel pits on the Cotswold Water Park, somewhere I think you might have done some time on a long time ago.
Yes.
Ashley Poole, right? I mean, that's a different podcast in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a whole nother podcast. I'd love to hear about that. And perhaps we don't have time for it today, but let's say you're targeting a very clear, weedy gravel pit, and there's some older fish in there, some real ancient relics. You already touched upon that perhaps they have a lot more receptor sites on them. How would you go about trying to winkle out those older special fish compared to the younger ones?
Well, the first thing I would do is, as surreptitiously as possible, without sounding as though I was asking too many questions, is I do quite a lot of reconnaissance trips and try and find out what other people are using. If it's a type of venue which sees very little angling pressure, that's almost more difficult because the fish are almost certainly natural feeders. And if you're trying to tempt any fish, however old they are, away from natural food, that can be really difficult. Mm-hmm. So if your visit to any venue, including this one you're talking about, involves a journey, then you've got to sort of shoehorn all your tactical approach into short periods of time, maybe weekends, maybe every other weekend, that sort of thing. That would mirror my fishing. That's the type of fishing I do on whatever water. So you have to bear in mind that these fish, you know, they're only carp, so that, you know, they're going to eat something that you know works. So if you've got a bait that's worked on various other waters, a recipe that's worked on various other waters, because waters do vary in the way they, you know, the way that carp seem to want to pick up bait, on particularly older fish, seems different on some waters to others, and we don't know why this is, but it's just nature. So if you're talking about a boilie, because, you know, that's going to give you the best chance to set a trap, you know, it's such a deadly tactic, you know, a hair rig and a boilie. So if we are talking about that, then I would kick off on the assumption that perhaps it's not a pressured venue in terms of angling pressure. Are we talking about a relatively unpressured venue, or are we talking about a pressured venue?
Well, it's hypothetical. I've got two waters in my mind, if I'm honest. One of them is absolutely not pressured at all. The other one does see a fair bit of pressure, unfortunately. So okay. Probably doesn't help you at all. But give us
let's take
scenarios if you can.
Let's take both scenarios. Let's take the pressured water first, because most people will be using a bait that's derived from ocean proteins. So it will be krill, shrimp, tuna, salmon, fish meal, LT94. You know, with usually some sort of spicy profile, or maybe an essential oil back note, or maybe some fruit in there somewhere. I would almost certainly go straight in with a milk protein. And the reason being is that the likelihood of anyone using a milk protein is probably zero. So I'd go in on a milk protein with a very low level of flavour. I'd make my best bait fresh the day before I go, if I can, or I would use a freezer bait which had only been frozen for a few days. Or if you make a bait the weekend before, because your session's the following weekend, the bait will be fine in the freezer for 5 days. It won't go off. It'll be absolutely fine. In the fridge, in the bottom of a fridge, it'll be fine. I often get asked how do I preserve my bait? When I'm in France, that sort of thing. You know, if you make a fresh bait with fresh eggs and keep it cold, it will keep cold for 6 or 7 days in the bottom of a fridge. It'll be fine. So fresh bait is important. Paste wraps, making your hook bait behave like a freebie is vitally important. So I'm not a great fan of wafters particularly, depending on the bottom. So if you've got blanket weed problem, that's going to require a different type of presentation. But if you've got some clear patches you can find, then I'm a great fan of very minimal hook bait, free offerings, and just a hook bait presentation, but very good quality hook bait. So on that busy water, I would go milk protein or something that is derived from something non-ocean protein. So you're giving them a different nutrient level and high in vitamin B, because a lot of these baits that people use, they completely forget. So if you're using Brocacell to provide the B vitamin profile, triple the dose rate of Brocacell, triple it, and put it on a milk protein. That'll give the fish something so unusual.
So like 15%, would you say?
15%, yeah. 15% yeasts. Or if you can source some other yeasts, use 2 different yeasts together. So that's what I would use, yeast and milk protein. Another good additive to use in that, which I think they love, would be spirulina, a little bit of spirulina, but you only want maximum of 2%. I think they're particularly keen on that, and it's also quite good because it makes the bait go green if you use about 2%. So keeps it away from ducks during the daylight hours. I rate spirulina; it's good. Spirulina and kelp together are a good additive. So on your other water, so you're going there, I would go straight in on something which I think they genetically just love, and that's a real top quality. This is on the less pressured water, just a top quality hydrolyzed fish protein based fish meal. So where you're putting in at least 15% CPSP90 or hydrolyzed fish protein, and you can get both of those from British Aquafeeds or Becquerel. They're good suppliers. So start off with 15% hydrolyzed fish protein, and then nice fresh LT94, a little bit of yeast, and so a really nice profile. I mean, it's that would be along the lines of my bio shellfish mix, which has got the full range of carbohydrates and cereal fractions and everything all in it, all in one go. It works all around Europe, everywhere you go. So it's one of those, it works bait. So most carp anglers that are experienced will have one of those recipes up their sleeve. And then when you're going to that tough lake, I would use 2 or 3 different, this is very important, 2 or 3, I said it on the clip actually, and it's a great trick, 2 or 3 different size baits. So the fish, when you're putting a little bit of bait all around the lake, so I'm not talking about using beds of bait, I'm talking about using singles, small beds, stringers, spod presentation, anything you like. So I would not use any particles whilst I'm doing this tactic. I would only use boilies. And I would use boilies made fresh again, ocean protein based, because it's not a pressurized water. They absolutely love it. They love the solubility of the CPSP90 stroke hydro fish protein. A bit of weight, a bit of soluble milk protein in, a bit of WPC is good, and that's a good binder. Full fat soy flour, they love full fat soya. And you've got a winning recipe that will work everywhere. Touch of robin red, if you like, but you don't need it. People get a bit obsessed with that. And it's just a nice subtle flavour that is in harmony with that mix. So a good fishy flavour like Ala Salar, a bit of crab or a blend of both, or a little tiny touch of savoury essential oils, savoury profile essential oils, but hardly any. Just like a drop or two of something, because the base mix should catch on its own almost. So 1 or 2 mil of flavour max in a 6-egg mix.
Yeah, for sure. Just very quickly on these, very low stock, not unfished for venues, why would you not implement particles?
The particle thing it's a fashion thing. So if it's a low stock venue and also not fished very much, you might get away with some particles. Right. But the problem is, and I had this problem at Ashley Pool in the early days, is they wouldn't pick up the boilies because they got on the particles.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I see.
So I'd sort of was shooting myself in the foot watching 2 30-pounders feeding over my bait, and they were completely obsessed with the particles.
Yeah,
they wouldn't pick up the boilies, and it was only until I exclusively used boilies that I caught a fish.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it makes sense. John, this has been amazing. I want to be respectful of your time. I mean, we ended on Ashley Pool. I grew up around Cirencester.
We did, didn't we?
I grew up around Cirencester, and ever since I was about 5 till about, I don't know, about 13, 14, I was riding around the water park like a madman, fished it a little bit. But who knows if we manage to get you back onto a podcast in the future. I'd love to hear about your history on Ashley Pool and how you develop some of the base mixes and different things like that. I mean, there's an absolute treasure trove that you possess there. But really appreciate you coming on.
It's very nice of you to ask me to come on, and I can't believe the time has flown by so much, and we're all passionate. You guys are clearly up there with your knowledge. You've got some very good knowledge of everything, and that will only get better and better. And we're all learning. I'm still learning. And it's when you're passionate about a hobby, you're right in what you say. It is a complete sort of subculture all in itself, the bait. But when you get a group of anglers together around a lake, you're having a chinwag in someone's swim and having a chat and a social. Always the subject goes to bait, doesn't it? Every time.
It is. Yeah, you'll get the people, their eyes will glaze over when you start talking about bait. But there's definite pockets, isn't there, within the angling world? And we're passionate about it. We're very much learning. We're always students. We'll always be students of it because there's always something else to learn. But it's a fascinating subject. You're one of the few people that are just so passionate and honest about the whole bait game and what you're doing in it, and you own a company as well, and you have the history to back that up. Obviously, you've been very prevalent within the game for a long time, so it's so unique to get someone like yourself on, not to blow smoke up your ass or anything, but it's been fascinating, and I know the listeners will have got a lot of value from this. So thank you so much for coming on. Absolute pleasure.
Well, thank you for asking me, and good luck, guys, and good luck with your fishing too, and catch a few when you get out, because we're going to get out in the next week or two.
Not long now.
Yeah. 1 week today.
Not long.
7 days today.
Champing at the bit. I'm like a greyhound in the traps, waiting to go.